Hello everyone, and welcome to the Never X Ever channel. In today's videos, we're going to see how to do a levelized cost of electricity model using Excel best practices. And we're going to start by modeling a very simple levelized cost of electricity, okay, the simplest it can be. And from this model, we're going to grow it, adding more features, more information, and make the model bigger and more robust. But before we go to the Excel and start modeling it, let's review how an LCoE is calculated, okay? And it's very simple. The LCoE is equals to the net present value of all the project costs divided by the net present value of the NPV of generation. And we can further break it down, okay, to make it more detailed by breaking down the NPV of the costs, which is equals to the net present value of the Capex plus the net present value of the Opex. So given that we're going to use this formula here to calculate the LCoE, we're going to use the following steps to calculate it, okay? So the first one, of course, is to come up with the Capex. And for this particular model here, the Capex is going to be the Capex of the PV, and it's going to be a EPC turnkey price, meaning that in the price, it includes everything, okay, from the purchase, the procurement of the PV, installation, EPC margins, and everything else, okay. The second is to calculate the Opex, and in our particular case here, we're going to break the Opex down into three other components, okay. The first one is the PV operation and maintenance costs, okay. The second one is the PV insurance, or more actually is the power plant insurance. And the third one is going to be the land lease. Next, we're going to calculate the total generation. And in this model here, the generation is going to be basically a number. It's going to be given, okay? And once we have the Capex, Opex, and the generation, which represents all the three main components of our formula, we're going to be able to calculate the net present value. And after that, we're going to be able to calculate the levelized cost of electricity, okay? Here in this table, we have the model inputs, and it's going to be a very simple model, okay, to start with. So what do we have in here? Basically, we have the generation. So the generation is a number, okay? We're going to assume 45,000 megawatt hour per year as a PV generation. And we're going to also assume that there's no curtailment. There's nothing in here. We can assume that this is basically a power plant supplying electricity to the grid, and the grid just takes everything and get paid for all the energy. Then we're going to have the PV capacity, which is the power plant capacity of 30 megawatts. We're going to assume a PV capex of $1,000 per kilowatt, and operation maintenance cost for the PV of $8 or $8 per kilowatt hours a year. And insurance is going to be a cost based on the percentage of the Capex. We're going to assume 0.5%. A land lease is going to be a fixed number of $20,000. And we're going to have a period of analysis of 25 years and a discount rate for the NPV for the net present value of 4.5%. Now that we have all the information, all the inputs we need for our model, let's going to open a blank Excel file, and let's going to start from scratch. And whenever I start a model, the first thing I do, I reserve the three first columns to be the section divider, okay, where I can put the section names and my headers. That's very useful, and you'll see in a while why. Okay, so that's the first thing I do. And after that, I just increase the width of the column D usually, so that I can plug all the rows information in here. Okay, so that's the first thing I do in every single model. The second thing I do is to divide my model in sections, and I always divide my model in at least 3 sections. Okay, so the first one is what I call the input sections. Okay, input section, and basically in here we're gonna plug in all our inputs, and whenever the user needs to enter any data in the model, that's the section that it's going to be entered into, okay? The second section is what I call the calculation section, okay? And that's basically where all the calculation of the model happens, okay? So basically what we're gonna do here, we're gonna grab information from the input section, we're gonna plug in here and make all the calculations. And the third one is what I call the results section, okay? And basically here it is what it is. I present all the results of the model. So most likely here we're gonna have an LCoE, okay? And we're gonna present a number in here, whatever the number is. So it's gonna be in this particular section in here. And most of the times, not always, but most of the times, I also have a setup section, okay, which is what I call my fourth section. And this is a section that basically supports the model throughout the other three sections, okay? And it's very useful because in here, we're gonna plug information that is used in the model, but doesn't belong to the inputs. And again, just watch the full video so you can see what the section is and how it works. Okay, also, I like to format things in different ways so it gets clear to the user and what represents each one of the information. Okay, and I tend to see Excel a little bit as Word, okay, where you have headers and where you have like information. So I try to divide my model again a little bit as Excel, okay? So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna just change the headings of this section here, okay? So as you can see here, if you go to my cell style window, okay, you can see that I have a bunch of cell styles, pre-formatted styles, okay, that I use quite often. I have a few of them for headings, and we're gonna see how it works again as we go along, okay? So I'm gonna set this one here to be my heading 1, okay? And I'm gonna also do the same with this other sections in here. So another reason why it's useful to have like these smaller columns in here and like all the sections into the same columns that we can go back and forth quite easily by pressing Control up and down. And as you can see here, we can move along each one of the sections quite easily. And as your model gets bigger and you can't see everything in one window, this becomes very, very easy for you to navigate your model, okay? So, but let me finish here formatting all my sections, okay? There's a very interesting command or shortcut in Excel, which is the F4. So F4 basically what it does, it basically execute the last command you gave to Excel, okay? In this particular case here, if I press F4 here, it's gonna set this cell as being a heading 1. So basically it's the same as I come over here and tap H1, okay? So that's what it's gonna do. But let me go back because I don't need it here, okay? So that's how I also format my model. Now that we have our 4 sections at least defined in the Excel file, let's gonna grab the inputs, okay, because we have the inputs here. So basically I'm gonna grab this information here, okay? I'm gonna copy, I'm gonna go back to my model, and I'm gonna paste it in here, okay? And as you can see, I always use column D to present what the row represents, okay? So that's basically why I pasted the information in here. So that's very standard. Another thing I always do is that I set my column E, or the one next to where the main information is, as being a unit column, okay? So in my models, everything that comes in this column here is going to be always represent the units we're gonna use, okay? And again, always set the units in your model, okay? The user needs to know what the number represents, okay? You cannot just have a number on its own like this and have generation and number and not clarifying what the unit of this number is, okay? So you should always have it, okay? So I also have a cell style for units, okay? So if you come over here, you can see that I have, let me see where it is, unit, okay? So so you can see that whenever I have a unit, it's going to be having this light gray font in here. So that's the second thing, okay? The third thing is to always set a proper style for input cells, okay? And by input cells, I mean like whenever you have to hard code a number or an information in your model, you got to inform the user like that this is what you're doing, okay? So the user knows that like you are inputting some information in the model that's going to be used for calculations. And again, what I do here, I'm going to select the cells, and I'm going to set this as being an in-cell input cell style, okay? And in my model, this means that every single cell that has a blue background and a dark blue font, it means an input, okay? So for more information, for you to learn how to do the cell styles and like how to use it, I have a video that you can see and learn how to do it, okay? So that's it for the inputs. The next step is to start calculating the net present values of Capex, Opex, and the generation. But for this, we need to have a timeline here for all the periods we're going to use to calculate these NPVs, right? So what we're going to have here, we're going to have a row called periods, and let's say in column J, we're going to have the first periods. Actually, we're going to have period 0, okay? And this what I like to set as a standard that represents the period where we disburse the Capex, okay? So there's no operation yet. So we're going to see on period 0, we are under the under construction phase, and all the Capex is disbursed in this particular period. And from there, we're going to go up to period 25, which is the number of periods we're going to run the power plant for, okay? We're going to go here, we're going to say equals to the left plus 1. I'm going to copy and paste this across. Okay, up to 25, so 23, 24, 25. So that's what we have in here. We're going to also center these things here. Okay. So now that we centered it, next we're going to calculate the Capex. And what do we have the Capex? We have the PV Capex, and that represents the turnkey price, right? As we discussed. This is going to be a USD, okay? So let me just fix everything to be under unit format. So where is my unit here? Here we go. So it's a unit format for this cell. And then we have to calculate the Capex. So the Capex is going to be a function of the capacity of the power plant times the cost per kilowatt for the PV, right? So we're going to have equals to 30 times, so we have 30 megawatts times 1000 USD per kilowatt. So here we have to do a unit conversion, right? Because we have 30,000 megawatt and then multiplying by a price which is given into as a kilowatt base, right? So we have to multiply this number by 1000 and then we have the number here. So we have to do two things in here, okay? We have to do two formatting in order to make the information more clear to the user. The first thing we're going to do is to add a separator between thousands in this particular number here. So for every 1000 we have in here, we're going to add a common, okay? So I have this as a cell style as well, and you can see this in a number, comma, 0, okay? It's much easier, as you can see here, to identify what the number is. Previously, when you read this number here, you're not sure whether this is 3 million, 30 million, or 300 million. But once you fix the formatting, it's very clear and it's easy to identify that the number we have in here is $30 million, okay? So this is the first thing. Second, differently from when we have hard-code numbers or data inputs in the cells, we're going to format this one here as a formula style, okay? So I also have a style for this, which I call cell, let me see where it is, formula in sheet, okay? And what it means basically is that this cell style here is a formula, okay, that only use information coming from this particular sheet, okay? So that's what it is. And this is going to be represented by a very light gray color and a dotted border, okay? Another thing here, which is very important too, okay? You never ever use hard-coded numbers when you're doing calculations like this, okay? So here we need to multiply this cell by 1,000 because we have to convert the 30 megawatts to 30,000 kilowatts. So the way to do it, or the way I do it, I go scroll down here to the setup, and I set these two rows here, okay, one called 1,000 and the other one called million, and I basically just hard code these two numbers in here. Okay, what I have to do now is to name this cell here. Okay, so in Excel you can name cells, so you can refer back to them. I simply type whatever name you give into a particular cell. So if you look here on the left upper corner, okay, you see that the cell you're activated now, it's the G32. So if you select it and type 1,000, basically what you're doing now, you renamed this cell to 1,000, okay? So if I go in any empty cell and I type equal 1,000, enter, you can see here by pressing F2 that we are referring whenever we type equals 1,000 to this cell here, okay? So that's very useful because now when you come over here, instead of like using 1,000, we're gonna just type 1,000, okay? And what it's gonna do is gonna refer back to this 1,000 here, okay? So let me press enter. And as you can see now, if you look over here, we have 1,000 and the right calculation, 30 million. I'm gonna also rename this one here, okay, to million. So another way to rename it, instead of clicking in here, you can also press Alt F3, and I'm gonna just type million, enter, okay? And the same happens. If I press equals million tab, I can also see we have a million in here, okay? So this is very useful. That's why that's the reason why we have the section set up. And that's basically, we're gonna populate this section here with this type of information, okay? So let's go back now to the calculation section. Okay, now that we have the $30 million in here, okay, we need to refer this number to the timeline because that's what we're looking for. We wanna put this number here in the timeline and then calculate the NPV of this number here, right? So the easier way to do it is just type equals 30 million, and I'm gonna do it on period 0 because by our definition, okay, we're saying that period 0 refers to the construction phase, and that's when all the money is disbursed. But that's not robust enough, okay? We wanna make the model as robust as possible, and in order to do that, everything that goes below the timeline should be referred with formulas, okay, with no hard code numbers inputted in here, okay, with a few exceptions that we're going to see right now. So what we're going to do here, what do you want to have here? We're going to say that if we are in period 0, we should have 30 million, else we should not, okay? So basically we've got to see 30 million in here, and you should see zeros all the way across up to the 25th year, okay? So how we do that? So I'm going to say equals if tab if what? This cell here is or equals to 0. So I'm going to hard put 0 here for now, okay? So the only times I really use hard code numbers in the timeline is either type 0 or 1, because that basically means that I'm trying to test whether a statement is true or false, okay? But right now in this model, that's the way we're going to do. In future models, we're going to improve the coding and we're going to make it even more robust, okay? But let's start by this. So if J13 equals to 0, then we have this cell is going to be equal to 30 million. Otherwise, it's going to be 0. Okay, I'm going to close here. What we're going to do next, we're going to fix the anchoring here, okay? Again, I'm not going to enter into the details on how to anchor or how to use anchoring. Okay, but we're going to anchor here, not only to make the model more robust, but also to make the copy and paste easier, okay? So I'm going to just click back here. And the tip here is whenever you are anchoring cells that is above your current cell, you just press F4 twice, okay? And what you have here, basically, you're anchoring only the row number 13, okay? So that's what you do, you press twice. And going back to the G15 cell here, okay, it's a bit different. So whenever you ever have to anchor cells to the left, okay, as we're anchoring here the G15, you press F4 3 times, okay? And what that does basically is you're anchoring now the columns, okay? And that makes your copy and paste across to the left and down to the bottom much easier, because you never get it wrong, okay? And you will see how it works, okay? So let me press enter here, and as you can see here, it gives me 30 million. And if I copy and paste it to the right, okay, it's gonna give me 0. And if I press F2, we can troubleshoot the model and check whether the calculation is correct. And the calculation is indeed correct, because it moved to the second period, okay, so for first to the second column, referring now to period 1, but it still kept the price, or the Capex PV into column G15, okay? So that's correct. So I have to copy these across, okay? And here goes another tip, okay? You can just simply do Ctrl C, shift it to the right, and keep going all the way through, okay? But that takes a lot of time, it's very boring, okay? So you don't want to do this, okay? Of course it works, as you can see here, okay? So everything's 0, as should it be, okay? But what do you want to do here? Okay, let me just press Ctrl Z here. Okay, what do you want to do also, always, okay? Whenever you have a timeline, you go to the end of your timeline, okay? By pressing Ctrl right. You move 2 columns to the right, okay? And you select this column here, okay? So Ctrl space, and then you select all the columns to the right, okay? So you say Ctrl Shift right. And what you're gonna do here, you're gonna hide the columns, okay? By pressing Ctrl 0. Okay, so basically now you cannot go further than AJ, okay? So what do you do now? Now it's much easier to copy and paste everything, okay? What you can basically do now, let me delete this, okay? So I wanna copy this formula here, Ctrl C, Ctrl C, Ctrl Shift right, okay? So I go all the way to the end of the columns, and now I just press Shift left, okay, and enter. So basically I copied everything quite easily from one end to the other, okay? And what we have to do here also is to format the numbers, okay? There's 2 things that you should be aware of, okay? The first one, we're not separating the numbers by a common for every 1,000, okay? So we're gonna fix it. And there's another thing which is really important here, okay? That we're gonna touch upon right now. When you're working with models, you wanna really understand whether the number you have here is a pure like 0, or whether it is a very, very, very small number, okay? Because that makes the difference, okay? So let me give an example, okay? So here, clearly we should have zeros, right? There's no doubt, it should be 0. But if you type 0, like very, very, very small number, okay? And you set your format by mistake or whatever as a number without any common, okay? You don't know whether this number is 0 or not, okay? You have no clue. So what you have to do, basically, you have to have the right format in here, okay? Let me format it here as like using this cell style here, okay? And what you want to have whenever you format numbers, you want to make sure that whenever you have 0 number, it appears as a dash, okay? Or as a negative sign, basically, okay? And not as 0. Because then you can clearly see that the difference, okay? When you have a very, very small number, you're gonna see a 0 here. But once you have a 0, what you're gonna see in here, you're gonna see a just dash, okay? Another thing to keep in mind, okay? When you have negative numbers, okay? Let's say my negative like 1,123, okay? You also wanna have the numbers in brackets, okay? And that's just to make the visualization easier, okay? So you clearly can see that this is a negative number, and you can check whether or not this is correct, but you can clearly and easily see that this is a negative number, okay? So these are 2 things to keep in mind that you can fix in your modeling, okay? So let me do the following, okay? I'm gonna format this here to be a number, 0, okay? I'm gonna increase the width of my column by pressing Alt OCA, okay? So now I have the right sizing. And I'm gonna Ctrl C, copy, and I'm gonna paste across. Ctrl Shift right, enter, okay? And as you can see here, if you make an update of this row here, you can see that everything is correct, okay? And you can go all the way down, okay? All the way to the right, okay? Let me go back to the beginning here, and let's gonna go now to the Opex. Next, we're gonna plug in the Opex, okay? And what do we have as an Opex? We have the PV Opex, sorry, let me fix here, PV O&M Opex, right? We have the insurance and we have the land lease. Okay, land lease. So as we have three components of the the Opex in here, what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna just write Opex, and I'm gonna change the headings for headings number 2 here. Okay, so I know we're just talking about Opex in here. Okay, I could also do a bit different. Let me do a bit different. So just to be more clear, okay, so we're gonna have a Capex in here, and I'm gonna have an Opex in here. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna set as heading 2, okay, both of them, and then I'm gonna have the generation in here, okay, generation. So basically, what I did in here, I'm further breaking down this section calculation, okay. That's another way to do it, okay. And then we can have key total generation, okay. But let's go for the Opex. The Opex, we're gonna have everything's gonna be USD, okay. So I'm gonna copy everything below, and what we can do, you can just come down here and press Ctrl D, okay. So it just copies what is above the cell. And let's gonna do calculate each one of these three components in here. So the first one is the PV O&M Opex, which is basically what? We're gonna have $8, okay, $8 per watt, per kilowatt installed, right? Because it's $8 per kilowatt per year, so it's gonna be $8 times 30 megawatts. But we have 30, we're charging $8 per kilowatt. So again, I have to multiply by 1,000. And because we set up the below here in the setup section the 1,000 name, okay, so just have to press 1,000 tab enter, and I have the number here. And what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna copy this formatting from this cell here, and I'm gonna paste it in here, okay. This is a very simple way to do it. What you can do, you can press Ctrl C, Ctrl down, and now you can press Alt ES, okay, and the paste special window is gonna pop up. And if you click T in your keyboard, or if you click just this field here, we're gonna just paste the formats of the cell, okay. So here we go, and then you can see clearly here. Okay, there's something here that is not right, so let me just redo here. Okay, now it's correct. So I just paste the correct formatting in here, okay. So that's 240. Let's calculate now the insurance. So insurance is what? It's 0.5% of the Capex. Okay, so it's gonna be equals what? Equals 0.5 times the Capex, okay. And here, of course, I could also anchor the cells, okay, but because I'm not gonna copy and paste this anywhere else, I'm gonna only use this number in this cell here. I'm gonna just leave it the way it is right here, okay. And again, I'm gonna copy and paste the format in here, okay. And why I'm gonna do it, okay, just because it's faster, because here I need to format two things. I need to format the cell style to be an in-sheet calculation, and I have to format the number, okay. So if I just copy here down Alt EST, I'm gonna do the two formats at the same time, okay. Okay, cool. And next we're gonna calculate the land lease, which is basically $20,000 per year. So there is nothing we can do, just press equals to G8, enter. I'm gonna copy Alt EST, paste the format, and we're done, right? So we have all our Opex in here, and what we have to do now is these are Opex, so these are costs or operational costs that we disburse every single year, right? So we have now to populate these numbers in here, right, from year 1 to year 25, because that are the years or the operational years where we're gonna have these costs. So let's gonna do it. Okay, so let's do it. If I did the anchoring correct for this particular cell in here, what I can do, I can just copy and paste it here, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, okay. And what we have here, we can see that the cells, they kept anchored in the right place. So because I just move it a bit down, okay, my reference to the cell to the left moved down, but it didn't move down the cell reference to the period, okay, so that's correct. However, what's wrong here is that what we have to do, have to have zeros for period 0, and we have to have $240,000 for each one of the other subsequent periods in here, okay. So we have to change the formula because the formula here is not correct, okay. So what I have to do now basically says if the period is not 0, okay, if it's different than 0, so let's say it's different than, this is the right notation for different than 0, then it's this number here, otherwise it's 0, right? So I press enter, I'm gonna copy it across, and I can also now copy not only across to the right, but I can also copy below, okay? So I can copy Ctrl C, Shift Ctrl right, Shift left, one Shift down, down, enter. And you can see here now that I copied everything across to the 3 operational expenditures we have, and all the cell references is correct. You can see here, so I'm looking on period 9 and I'm getting the number on row 17. If I go to cell S19, I'm looking on period 9 and copying the number from cell G19, okay? So everything is correct here. And because I also have several Opex for this particular project, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a column called total. Okay, sorry, it's going to be here, total. Okay, it's going to be in USD, so Control D. And it's going to be what? It's going to be basically equals to the sum of these numbers in here, right? The total per period, okay? So don't need to indicate here, to be honest. So what we're going to do here, we're going to just press here Alt equals, and then when I press Alt equals, I can add everything that is above, okay? And I'm going to format this to the line styles I have here, okay? As you can see, I have a line add, as you can see in here. So we're going to copy, Ctrl C, sorry, Shift T, Ctrl right, Shift left, enter. And as you can see here, we have all the calculations correct, okay? So that's what we have now. So last, what we need to do, we also need to calculate the generation, okay? So let's do it. So the unit for generation is megawatt hour, okay? And we don't need to put megawatt hours per year here. Why? Because we know we're going to make the calculations for every single period. And in this particular case here, each period refers to 1 year, okay? So we don't need to refer as a megawatt per year here, okay? And what is the generation? Generation is equals to 45,000 megawatts per year. So here we're going to copy the formatting, Ctrl C, Alt EST, okay? So we have in here, and what we have is basically the same format or the same formulas for the cell above in here, okay? Because we want to have 0 on period 0, and we want to have 45,000 for every single other year, okay? So I copied the formula here, Ctrl C, press enter. Let me check the anchoring. The anchoring is correct, okay? So now I'm going to copy across, so Ctrl C, Ctrl Shift right, Shift left, enter, okay? So we have 45,000 for each one of the periods in here, okay? So that's nice. So what do you have to do next? Now, basically, if you recall the formula, now I have to calculate the NPV for the Capex, the NPV for the Opex, and the NPV for generation, okay? So let's do it now. So I'm gonna add a few more columns in here. So I'm gonna press Shift down, okay, Control plus, and I'm gonna write here NPV, okay, net present value. And I'm gonna also format this to be 82, okay? So we need to calculate the NPV of the Capex, of the Opex, and of the generation, correct? So the units are still the same, okay, because it doesn't change. So it's gonna be USD for the Opex and Capex, and megawatt hour for the generation, right? And I'm gonna calculate the NPV here. And in Excel, the NPV, there's a formula which is very straightforward, okay? So it can be equals to what? The NPV of what? So of the rate. So the rate is up here, okay? I'm gonna click. I'm gonna anchor because I wanna always use this particular rate in here, okay? And I'm gonna get the values for the Capex, okay? And all the values are in here from period 0 to period 25. Enter. Let me format this, okay? I'm gonna sell this as a comma 0 and as a formula in sheet, okay? As you can see here. And I'm gonna now do the same for the Opex. And the easier way I can do it is just by pressing Ctrl D. I'm gonna copy the formula from above, okay? As you can see here, so I'm still fixing and the discount rate in 4.5 because I did anchor it correctly. But now I have to fix in the values, right? So I'm going to just select this and bring this down here because I want to calculate the Opex for the total costs per period, okay? And I'm going to press enter. In the next one, we're going to do the NPV of the generation, okay, which is the same calculation. So I'm going to press Ctrl D, F2, and I'm just going to move over this thing down here, okay? So the formatting is already correct because when I press Ctrl D, it also copies the formatting, okay? So that's the NPV. One thing to notice here is how we're calculating the NPV, okay? And if you Google it around, you can see that the NPV can be either calculated at the beginning of the period or at the end of the period, okay? So there's a few ways you can do it, okay? And by using this formula here, okay, what I'm assuming is that, let's say, each column refers to one period or 1 year, okay? So I'm assuming that we are in the 1st of January of, let's say, period 0, let's say 2022, okay? But the Capex is being disbursed in the 31st of December, okay, at 11:59 p.m., okay? So we're discounting also, we're bringing to the present value the $30,000 that we disbursed in the last day of the year, okay? So we're assuming here that we are calculating NPV the first day of the year, but we are disbursing it the last day of the period, okay? If you want to fix everything to the first day of the period, okay, for the first day of the year, actually, what you can do, you can start calculate your NPV from year 1, okay? But then you just have to add the Capex, okay? And don't need to NPV it because the NPV of value that is being disbursed right now is the number itself, okay? Then you would get 30,000, okay? But just for convention, I just like to use it because at the end of the day, that's another important concept as well, okay? The LCoE is a model that you have to compare one project against the other, okay? And as long as you always use the same methodology, you should be able to find the project which has the lowest LCoE. And that's what we're using the LCoE for, okay? So let's gonna now calculate the final number, which is the LCoE. And what is going to be the LCoE, okay? So we can have the LCoE either already being calculated in the calculation sections or bringing directly here to the results section. But I'm gonna do both, okay? And in a later video, you will understand why, okay? So let me call this the LCoE section, okay? I'm gonna format it. So the LCoE is going to be what? USD per megawatt hour, because that's the units we're using here, right? So again, so always make sure you're using the right units, okay? So then you don't get lost, and your user and whoever is using your model will be clear on what's being calculated, okay? So what is the LCoE? The LCoE for this project is going to be equal to the sum of what? Capex and Opex, right? That's what we have here. Divided by the sum or the NPV of the generation. I'm gonna use a sum here just for to make it consistent with the way I'm calculating, okay? But you don't need to use it, okay? You could just divide by G28. I'm gonna press enter, so the LCoE equals to $54.07, okay, per megawatt hour. I'm gonna also format this, okay? I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna use a different format now. So this is a formula in sheet calculation, okay? Now I wanna use a number with common, okay? Because I wanna see how many cents we're paying for this particular, or the LCoE for this particular project is, okay? So that's it. And what I need to do now, basically, I'm gonna get rid of this rows in here, okay? I'm gonna just transfer the LCoE. I'm gonna copy this here. I'm gonna paste it. And this is going to be equals to the cell above here, okay? And I'm gonna just paste the results in here because I know that the LCoE for this particular project is equals to the 5407, okay? Because this model is small, you don't necessarily need to have a duplication of the LCoE. You could very much, or very well just having this formula here, over here, down here, that would be fine, okay? But you see in the next videos that are gonna grow the model, we're gonna add more information, we're gonna make it more robust. And you will see that we're gonna change eventually the calculations to a different sheet, okay? We're gonna have a different sheet, and that will make our life easier. Okay? We're gonna have to bring this value to the, we're gonna have to have the LCoE results in both places, okay? Just to make it more clear as well, okay? So that's it for the model now, okay? But before we finish the model, one thing that I always do is to check if everything is correct, okay? So in terms of numbering, in terms of formatting, if the numbers are correct, if there's anything that we can improve, right? So I basically go through the model, I see if there is any mistake, okay? And I can see already here that these numbers here, though they show the comment for every 1,000, they're not correctly formatted, okay? The same ones for this one here, I like to have the number with the commas because these are in small numbers, and I want to make sure whether I'm talking about $8 per kilowatt per year or $8.99, okay? So these are two different numbers, and I want to be clear on what I'm being calculated here, okay? For period of analysis, you can use both, okay? I know implicitly that this should be an integer, okay? So it should be 25. But if you want to make sure, and if you don't want to get confused, you can also have the 25 with the periods, with the 2 zeros after the period, okay? So that's really up to you, okay? So that's the first thing I notice in here. Other than that, I think there's one more thing that we can do, okay? I can get rid of a few extra lines in here. I like to be consistent also, like having like spaces or empty rows. So as we didn't have any empty rows here, sorry, in between these two lines here, just deleted this one in here, and we don't have in here. And to finalize, another thing that I always do in my models, okay, I add just before the timeline, okay, the total amount of whatever is being calculated, okay? So in this particular case here, what I also always do is say this is going to be equal to the sum of what? Of all the capex, okay? So let me just increase the size here, okay? So if you can see here, I'm just adding everything that comes to the right, okay, in the timeline. And just to make more space and make it more neat, okay, I'm just gonna add another column in here. And I have a formatting for these, which I call cell total, okay? And basically what I do, I just copy it across Alt-S, V, Alt-S, T. I just copy it across all the rows that I needed, okay? So now you can see how much the total capex adds up to for the 25 years and how much it adds to the PV Opex and for the capex, okay? That's another thing I do also, okay? Well, I think that's all for the model, okay? There is really nothing else we can do here. If I were to do one more thing and only one more thing, I would add here, but that would be a bit redundant. Okay, I would write NPV here, okay, and I have a cell style, okay, just to make it clear that the number you're looking here, it is not the capex, but it's the NPV of capex, and it can even be more clear here by type NPV of capex, NPV of Opex, okay, and NPV of generation. But again, I'm being over cautious here, would say. You don't need to, but again, eventually you can do it, right? So that the user can see exactly what you're calculating in here, okay? So that's it for today. This is the first video of the LCoE calculations. For the next videos, we're going to add a bit more information. We're going to break down the information a bit more, and we're going to add a few features in the way we calculate the LCoE, okay, to make the model more robust and more detailed, okay? So stay tuned. Thank you very much, and see you soon.